Welcome back. Vice President Kamala Harris sitting for her first solo network interview since launching her presidential campaign, and she was struggling to explain her economic plans. Here's MSNBC last night. Watch.
If you can't raise corporate taxes, or if GOP takes control of the Senate, where do you get the money to do that? Do you still go forward with those plans and borrow?
Well, but we're going to have to raise corporate taxes, and we're going to have to make sure that the biggest corporations and billionaires pay their fair share.
Even the host calling out Harris's non-answers after the sit-down. Watch.
Here's what's a little tricky. She doesn't answer the question around if the GOP is controlling the Senate, can't raise corporate taxes, where is she going to get the money from? To expand the child tax credit and do all the things she wants to do. And she says, we just have to do it.
All of this just one day after former President Trump gave a detailed speech on his tax and manufacturing plans. He explained how he'll bring production back to America. Joining me now is Oklahoma Congressman Kevin Hern. He's the chairman of the Republican Study Committee and a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for being here. What is your reaction to Kamala Harris's first sit-down interview 40 days before the election?
Well, it's your typical Democrat tax and spend plan. That's what it is compared to President Trump's plan of cutting taxes and letting that money stay in the communities to create jobs and, not have to come to Washington, D.C. and look for special programs. She made a comment that her qualifications is that she worked at McDonald's 3 months. I worked at McDonald's 35 years, so maybe I should be president. She had no answers to any of the policies. That's why they haven't interviewed her. The other, left-leaning media outlets have not interviewed her because she has no answers. And just yesterday, President Biden said he gave her full authority on domestic and foreign policy. So she's had 3.5 years, almost 4 years now, to implement these great policies talking about, and she hasn't done anything. And that's what President Trump called out in the debate.
Well, it's interesting to me that the polls are so close right now, Congressman. You're right. She hasn't articulated really any policy plans. She has some ideas on taxes. She wants to tax the highest earners. She wants to tax business. She wants to go after business for what she says they're price gouging. But at the end of the day, there's really no cohesive detail on really what she wants to do. And yet, look how close she is in the polls to Donald Trump. Have you noticed that?
Well, yeah, it's very concerning. It's very concerning that the American people, turn off their Twitter accounts if that's what's bothering them. But they should look at how much money they've got in the pocket. They need to remember that in the last 4 years, the inflation has cost the average household, 24% of increased cost. And that's even more if you look at the basic goods. The people she's talking about helping are the ones that are hurt the most. Inflation is really painful for those in the lower income levels, middle income levels. And that's who she's destroying the most. And when she's talking about joining this global minimum tax issue, every person out there, even Janet Yellen knows this, is that it's not going to bring $100 billion of new tax dollars into the United States. It's actually going to take $100 to $200 billion out of the United States to other parts of the world. That's why our tax policy, if that were to be implemented, would be controlled by people in Paris, not people in Washington, D.C. She's completely out of touch with policy. She's running a Joe Biden in the basement-like campaign. And the American people need to wake up and realize that this is going to be extraordinarily painful in their pocketbook if she becomes president.
Mm-hmm. Well, experts are weighing in on the candidates' differing plans. Congressman, you wrote an op-ed called The Important Issue That No One's Talking About, writing, while many are familiar with President Trump's 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, few know that some of the most important tax cuts in the bill are set to expire at the end of 2025. Whoever wins this election, both in Congress and in the White House, will control what happens to the tax code next. That sentence should scare and motivate you. Tell us more. What are you saying?
Well, under the leadership of Jason Smith, the chairman of Ways and Means, 6 months ago, he took apart the TCJA policies and spread them out across 10 working teams. I have all the international tax policy. We have 9 other groups that work on domestic policy, and we're looking and talking to every single company that will come in. We've had over 300 companies that have come in across America of all walks of life talking to us. Nobody wants to join the foreign, the policy she's talking about with global minimum tax because they know as Americans these dollars would go out of the country and not come back in. But what I see, Maria, that really disturbs me is I go out and, after we get out of Washington, D.C., nobody's talking about this. There's so many other things on the plate right now, like the election is imminent. It's so important. The American people need to look at this. They need to understand that their taxes are going to go up. The average Oklahoman will see a $3,000 increase in taxes if this expires in December 31st of 2025. So this is a real problem, and we've got to get Americans aware of this and understand that there is a complete difference in policies between President Trump and a potential President Kamala Harris.
Well, I mean, there's also corruption and so many corners that we look at. I mean, look, we want to know what the heck went on with the failures of Secret Service around protecting President Trump. A stunning bipartisan Senate report revealed the failures of the Secret Service in that first assassination attempt against Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, including failing to ensure that the AGR roof was covered. It revealed a Secret Service agent actually requested drone equipment days before the rally, but it was denied with no explanation. The committee confirmed that Secret Service knew about a suspicious person with a rangefinder on a roof for at least 27 minutes before shots were actually fired, but they didn't say anything to Trump. They allowed him to stay on stage. An interview with the Secret Service counter-sniper team leader revealed it did not cross his mind to keep Trump from going on stage. Yesterday, Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn was here. Here's what she said.
It reads more like the Keystone Cops than the Secret Service. I think it is disrespectful of the job the Secret Service is given to do. And when you're trying to dial 1-800 numbers to figure out how to fly a drone, and you're trying to repair radios, and you're doing this at the time the event starts, it shows there was a lack of planning. No one seemed to know who was ultimately in charge.
Congressman, your reaction?
Well, certainly we had a lack of communication. We have a lack of accountability between all the working teams, the local police, the state police, even within the Secret Service, President Trump's body detail versus the front people that went out and supposedly secured the locations, weren't even communicating with one another. As you heard about the equipment failures, didn't even know how to fix the equipment, couldn't get additional equipment. I think what Senator Blackburn said is exactly right. This is about looking like the Keystone Cops, and it sends a message to the rest of the world, and that's why you saw what happened in Mar-a-Lago just a couple of weeks ago. But I think more importantly, Maria, the Democrats have allowed millions of people across the southern border. We know there have been known terrorists caught and others that have not been caught. How many Iranian, terrorist plots are out there to go assassinate President Trump? And, we need to get after this. Yesterday in the CR that was passed here, there was $231 million of money that's been moved into the Secret Service to get after these with cooperation, full cooperation. There's going to be a look today, when you look at the House side, just as the Senate did yesterday, about should the Secret Service be moved from Homeland Security back to Treasury where it once was. We have to get better accountability. It's abysmal. It's sad to see what's happened in just in a matter of about 2.5 months. And the rest of the world is watching and seeing an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the world is also watching all the lawfare, Congressman. I mentioned corruption. I mean, it really appears to be that depending on whose side you're on will dictate your fate, okay? So Mayor Adams, in New York was fine until he started opening his mouth about the border, the wide open border costing all this money and crime in New York. And now all of a sudden he's indicted, right? You've got President Trump, the enemy of President Biden. So he's got all of these indictments against him. Meanwhile, you got James Comer, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, telling us that Joe Biden himself accepted millions of dollars from overseas companies like China, and it was bribery and no problem. Oh, he's on the right side, so there's no problem with him. I mean, what are we supposed to believe?
Well, certainly it's been disproved about President Trump time and time again from special counsel and others. The Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, James Biden family, taking money from Russia and Ukraine and China is absolutely true. We saw this on Ways and Means from the whistleblowers and the IRS, both Democrats. This is true. We have to get after this. It has to be stopped. There has to be respect brought back to the DOJ, and we need to do that in the next administration.
So how
under
come the
President
DOJ
Trump.
hasn't done anything about it then? I mean, here they are indicting Eric Adams, but no problem with Joe Biden. You say it's all true.
Well, certainly when you look at President Biden, he doesn't want them to go out and do their job. And so he's going after President Trump, trying to take him out that way. He's trying to make sure that he's embarrassed and these illegal cases are brought forward. And we're going to see what happens in the Supreme Court. But what's happened in these state courts is sad, with him taking the number 3 person from the DOJ to go down and actually prosecute this case. We've got to get President Biden out of office and get President Trump back in office.
Congressman, thank you. We'll be watching your work. Kevin Hern joining us this morning in D.C.